Good afternoon. I want to acknowledge we are gathered today on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. Yesterday, Danielle Smith introduced her first and hopefully last budget. It's a budget that comes up short in addressing the challenges faced by the people of this city. Calgary has the highest unemployment rate among major cities and the highest downtown office vacancy rate in the country. But there was very little for the people of Calgary in yesterday's budget. There was no additional funding for downtown Calgary. Danielle Smith, despite talking about the importance of the digital media tax credit to support the tech sector and revitalize downtown Calgary on her radio show just a few days ago, there was no digital media tax credit in the budget. It's clear that Danielle Smith and the UCP still believe economic diversification is a luxury and supporting downtown Calgary isn't their job. Albertans don't have to accept this budget. In just a few short months, you'll have a choice to choose a government that will do better for you. And now I'll turn things over to the person that will lead that government, our leader, Rachel Notley. Rachel.
Well, thank you very much, Joe, and thank you for speaking for Calgary and for all of your dedication to this city and this community. I like to think of Calgary as my home away from home, and quite frankly, every day that I spend running along the river or walking down Stephen Ave or knocking on doors in Glenmore, Beddington, or Southeast, I meet Calgarians who are actually looking for help, and even more than that, looking for hope. They tell me their stories, how they're struggling to afford basic costs, how they're worried about their kids' education, and how long they've been waiting in the ER before they get hundreds of millions in deferred electricity costs. Danielle Smith brought in a budget that actually also hides many of what I still believe are her real plans, like, for instance, the plan to pay off her friends and insiders through an up to $20 billion corporate giveaway. Now, she was also, though, on the other hand, very open about her plan to establish a pre-election slush fund of more than $1 billion. And she's putting that over the needs of families who are right here in Calgary and across the province. She's going to use your money to pay off her friends, and I think that's wrong. I think we should be focused on ending the crisis in healthcare. Danielle Smith and the UCP think that their last-ditch attempt to paper over the long-term damage caused by the UCP over the last 4 years will somehow be enough. But we know that at the very least, we're still $1.5 billion short of where we should be right now with respect to our healthcare funding. And that hundreds of thousands of Albertans don't have a family doctor. Tens of thousands can't get the surgery they need, and emergency room wait times are still far too long. And frankly, it is disrespectful of Danielle Smith and the UCP to try and convince Albertans that the healthcare crisis is over. We need a plan, and the Alberta NDP has one. We will modernize primary care and give 1 million more Albertans access to quality family health care, including timely access to doctors. And when it comes to education, Danielle Smith's government ignored students in growing communities for years, even as the pandemic had a devastating impact on classroom learning. Fact is, even with this budget, we are still short 3,700 teachers. And we see little to support students over the long term. And when it comes to the schools that were announced today, we simply can't trust this government. They've been ignoring these communities for years and are only making promises now to buy votes. Now, when I was Premier, we funded 240 new school and modernization projects. That's our record. We made the commitment and it happened. What I commit to you today is that the projects the government claims to support today will actually be built, all of them. We're also going to build a lot more as well, because this budget doesn't come close to meeting the needs of growing communities here in Calgary and in many areas across the province. We'll build more, and we'll have more to say in the weeks ahead after we talk further with parents and school boards. My message in closing is this: an Alberta NDP government will support families by funding healthcare and education every year not just in the weeks leading up to an election. We will never make you pay to take your kids to see a doctor. And we will work to make sure you can make ends meet all the time, not just in the 2 or 3 months before an election. And to the points that Joe made, we will build a resilient economy with a vibrant downtown right here in Calgary, with more good-paying jobs in oil and gas, renewable energy, agriculture, and in tech. And my message for all Calgary families I meet with every day in this city is, I'm with you, and I promise you, an Alberta NDP government will be focused on the things that matter to you. Thank you, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions from the folks who are here right now.
Okay, we'll start with questions in person, then move to the phone lines. So Adam's got the mic down.
Thank you. Kelly Kratterman, Globe and Mail. Just wondering, when you talk about a slush fund, just to be clear, you're talking about the Alberta Fund.
I'm talking about the Alberta Fund.
Okay,
Indeed.
and that is the money that they're able to use for one-time spending. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, as of April 1st.
And I guess you're in speaking about concerns about healthcare and primary care. How do you make this election about those things rather than the surpluses that the government is able to announce, the money that they're able to have, and perhaps the election goodies that are able to come in the weeks ahead?
Well, I honestly think it's going to be Albertans who make this election about healthcare. And the ways in which this government is failing them with respect to healthcare. I say that because I'm talking to them day in and day out. And, the government can try to gaslight what's going on in healthcare all they want, but Albertans experience it each and every day. And that's what they're talking to us about. And so we will continue to engage with Albertans on the things that they tell us matter most. So the UCP can be off in UCP land doing whatever they want, but I think it's Albertans who will make one of the most important issues in this election be healthcare.
And when the UCP is criticizing your party, and in a lot of ways it does feel like the campaign is already on, they talk about your connection to the federal NDP, the federal Liberals. They also talk about the history of governing last time around, which we know were much different economic times in Alberta. How do you make this election about the current economic times rather than a reflection on what your party governed through between 15 and 19?
Well, I think that most folks, when it comes to politics, tend to look at what they are experiencing right in front of them this time, this day. Maybe going back a little while, a few months, maybe thinking forward a few months, but generally speaking, that's where real folks tend to live. And so if we get into talking about records, I think the record that we'll be talking about is the UCP record. The record on starting a fight with doctors so that they're driving them out of the province. The record on starving our healthcare system so that emergency wait times have skyrocketed and ambulance wait times have skyrocketed and folks can't get the care they need when they need it. The record of starving our schools so that some families, for instance, on the other side of the ring road, literally have to put their kids on a bus for an hour a day to get them to a school because nobody moved on building schools that we all knew were needed. The record that those families experience today arising from the fact that their kids are in a classroom with 37 other children and they come home stressed and anxious and crying because they don't understand what's going on and they can't get the attention of the teacher. That's what people are experiencing right now, and that's the record of this UCP government.
Adam McVicker with Global Calgary. The downtown, I know you guys just mentioned that. With all the revitalization strategies and the plans going on right now, nothing in this budget. There was some last year. I'm curious, how would you guys have handled this differently if you were the governing party, given that now that you've seen the numbers and all the finances behind what they were working with in this budget?
Well, I was very proud to stand with Joe here, I guess it was about a year ago, April, anyway, sometime in the last little while, where we rolled out our downtown revitalization strategy for the city of Calgary. So if you go to albertasfuture.ca, there is a very detailed set of plans about policies that we would focus on to help support folks who are living down here and working down here and investing down here in downtown Calgary. And so we would want to consult more with the city and also with the folks that I just described to see which parts of that plan should be a priority. But there's a number of elements to it, and I'm surprised to see so many of those critical elements completely missing from this budget, because the plan, we didn't come up with that plan in a room by ourselves. We came up with it after talking to business leaders, municipal leaders, community leaders, arts groups, all the folks down here, and we know that we were on the right track, and I'm surprised that this UCP government chose to ignore all of them.
And why do you think it's important for the province to step in and contribute to these, these plans and the investments that the City of Calgary have made in terms of revitalizing the downtown core?
Well, it's critically important because, Calgary is Alberta's largest city. It is the corporate headquarters in many ways, and it's a key tool, quite frankly, in attracting investment to Alberta overall. And so we need to make sure that the downtown here in Calgary is healthy, and the downtown in Edmonton is healthy, both of them. And there are opportunities for the government to play a role in making that happen. But unfortunately, we haven't seen the government, this UCP government, take the lead on it. You may recall back to early on in their tenure when Travis Taves said that downtown Calgary and economic diversification were luxuries, and they weren't the provincial government's problem. I disagree. I think there is a role to play as a partner in helping these key parts of our province grow and be resilient.
Rick Bell, Calgary Sun. Let's pretend you're at the door, if we could do that. That's the old drama teacher in me coming out.
We're going to do improv. Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. It's
No
a little bit of
risk there. Not at
Joe, a patron of the arts, will appreciate this. And somebody says to you, I heard on TV about that budget, and it looks like, they got a surplus, and they're spending money on cops and courts, and they're spending money on the checks they're sending me, and they're spending money on health care, and they just finished saying all the health care stuff's pretty well fixed. They're almost there. And that's what I saw on TV, or that's what I read, whatever. That's what I heard about the budget. And what do you have to, how do you counter that when there isn't an obvious poison pill, a poison pill like, for instance, a big tax hike, or a poison pill like deep cuts, when it's more, you have to do a little bit more explaining. So how do you do that when you have a low information voter saying, Rachel, I hear that budget's pretty good. They're not raising my taxes and they're giving me more stuff. Yeah.
Well, what I typically do when I'm talking to folks is I ask them to tell me what their experiences are. And so in a case like that, I would say, so how has healthcare been working for you? How has healthcare been working for your family, your friends? What are you hearing about it? And then when I inevitably get the answer that we will likely get, I will say, I need to tell you that there is not enough in this budget to address those problems. We have a plan to make sure that up to 1 million Albertans can get access to a family doctor, and that's a really detailed plan. It's a bold plan. We're not going to see any change from what these folks are promising. And do you trust the UCP to make healthcare better, given their impact on healthcare up until now? So it's not for me at a doorstep to lecture people about what they think. It's about hearing what they're telling us and responding. And we have spoken to 250,000 Albertans so far. And let me tell you, there's a pretty strong theme running through what they're telling us, and they don't trust this. And Budget Day is a good day for people like us, but generally speaking, people go back to their real experiences to decide how the government's doing.
Improv part 2. We'll go from the doorstep to an election debate stage, and as Kelly mentioned a bit earlier, this it's inevitably going to happen, and you know that because they've already created ads about it. So they've signaled pretty well what one of the things they're going to say on the debate stage, which is, You're not, why don't we go back to what you did in 2015, 19, and then whatever their laundry list is of things that they want to hit you with. What do you do on the debate stage? Because they're going to ask that when they're going to pose that and say it's about you. It's not about not trusting me. It's about not trusting you because X, Y, Z, whatever their list is. What do you say to that?
Well, of course, it's a little premature because I'd probably surprise you to know that we do spend a little bit of time thinking about that before we get onto the debate stage, and I haven't had a chance to do that. But listen, I think that the whole, my record, the whole mud raking vis-a-vis the federal government and all that kind of stuff, again, Albertans are not feeling like this government has been listening to their priorities, that they have been acting to do better on Albertans' priorities. This is a government that finally heard that affordability was a bigger issue than the Sovereignty Act. And what did they do? They came up with a bunch of affordability measures that expire 30 days after the election's over. That is so deeply cynical. And I don't think Calgarians or Albertans as a whole are going to fail to see through that. And I think they might actually be a bit irritated the more they think about it, when they see just all the bills that are going to be coming due on July 1st. Again, it goes to hearing what Albertans are telling us is a priority and then doing our best to talk about what our genuine plans are to try and make life better for them. And that's basically where we're going to spend our time talking with Albertans, is not about sort of pie-in-the-sky conversations about what happened 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 4 years ago. I mean, I could talk forever about Travis Taves' fiscal record. Like, let me tell you, I'd happily go head-to-head with Travis Taves in terms of fiscal responsibility, and I feel quite good that at the end of it, at that little wonky debate, Rick, that I would probably win on points. However, Albertans just want to know what we're going to do to help them with what's right in front of them right now. And what's right in front of them is affordability measures that are going to go up in a puff of smoke in July, healthcare that is not there for them and their families, education that is in crisis. These are the things that they're talking about, and concern about who is going to actually build a resilient jobs economy in the long term.
Okay, move to questions on the line. Just a reminder, if you're joining by Zoom, to use the raise hand function. And if you're joining by phone, to press *9. And we'll go to our first caller.
In Calgary. I guess my first question is, we're still waiting for a response and confirmation from the UCP, but some sources on social media are alleging the UCP made a contract with private operating rooms to pay those clinics to conduct a set number of surgeries, regardless if they are performed or not. Has the NDP been able to confirm any truth to this? And if it is true, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess, I'm certainly aware of that conversation that's going on, and I'm deeply concerned about the irresponsibility of such a thing, if it's true. We haven't been able to confirm. We will definitely be asking about it in question period next week. And if the government hasn't come clean on the answer one way or the other between now and then. But we will definitely be asking about it in the legislature, because it's a very concerning piece of information if accurate.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, there is actually. I was just actually going to ask about charter funding in the budget. Why should we be funding funding, I guess, elected boards instead of charters? And what would make education more inclusive?
Well, bottom line is this, is I think the priority in the budget should actually be for public school funding. And certainly that's not what we are seeing in this budget. And so that is very troubling to me. This is actually, the announcement we saw today around school funding was very, very sketchy, suffice to say, because, at the heart of it is 13 new schools being announced, and then plans to plan for more plans with respect to the rest of the schools. No commitments to families, no commitments that they will see an actual school in their community for more than just 13. And at the same time, we're seeing almost the same kinds of commitments in the charter and private school sectors. So to me, when this government has allowed the demand for public school infrastructure to be so unmet for so long, they should be putting a much greater emphasis on public school construction, and they failed on that in this budget.
Okay, we'll go to our next caller.
Hi there, it's Jeremy Thompson with CTV Edmonton here. Yeah, just sticking with education here. The government is, touting this as sort of the biggest education budget ever. We see it's basically a 5% increase overall from last year. What do you make of that characterization and the sort of the overall increase here?
I think it's a deeply misleading characterization of this government's approach to education, which is hardly surprising. That is the way this minister has conducted herself since day one. Here's the thing. If this government had simply funded enrollment relative to 2019, there would be $1.6 billion more in this budget than there is today. In addition, there would be 3,700 more teachers. So we are...
Yeah, just one here. You mentioned yesterday in the rotunda there that you see more funding for charter schools in this budget than sort of the rest of the schools combined. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering what the math is on that. What are you seeing as far as tons of money for charter schools versus the rest?
Right. So, there's no question there's a lot of moving parts in terms of the budget reporting. Where we found that was on the capital budget table at the back of the fiscal report, which is interesting because I do know that later in the day we looked at the capital plan that was online and it actually had different numbers in it than the capital plan that was at the back of the fiscal report of the budget. So, it's the government's budget. I can't explain why their numbers are moving around. But on that fiscal report, in the capital plan, we saw that when it came to new funding for this year for new projects, that there was more funding for new projects as it related to private and charter schools than as it related to public schools. And it was about, it's about a $10 million difference, something like that. So I urge you to go check out that particular document, that particular table.
Okay, next question goes to Dean Bennett.
Good afternoon, Rachel. Can you comment on details are sketchy, but just discussed this morning. There's going to be some bills in the House this spring to stop federal workers from trespassing on Alberta private land. He says that is happening here. And we're also going to have a bill to shield gun owners from federal firearms confiscation. That's it. What do you think?
Well, I think generally speaking, this is we haven't seen the bill. And so we don't know exactly what solution this is that is seeking a problem. I know that the federal gun legislation is in the midst of review right now, and so I'm not exactly sure which group it is they are attempting to send a message to. What we do know is that this seems to be part of a longer pattern to distract Albertans from key priorities that really matter to them and to pick fights with Ottawa. And it's very possible that that's what we're going to see in this legislation. But I will say, Dean, that we haven't been fully briefed on what's in it. So, you have to put a bit of an asterisk around it.
Was there a follow-up, Dean?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, we have time for one more question in person. Okay, and seeing no more questions, that's all for today.
Thank you very much. Much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.